I'd like to invite Carolyn. She is a co-founder of trans support group FLY, First Love Yourself, that has operated in Metro Halifax for 2 years. She's also a steward in her workplace for the Professional Institute of Public Service of Canada. A big round of applause for our trans sister, Carolyn, please.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for welcoming me here today. I think that it's important for me to say a couple of things right off the bat. I was stopped by somebody who asked me earlier if I'd do an interview, and the first thing they started asking me, well, how does the community feel about this? How does the community feel about that? I'm not the community. I'm just me. I'm Carolyn. And it's nice to meet you. Hi. So with that, I'm going to just tell a little bit about my story and why we created FLY, which, by the way, stands for First Love Yourself. It's a very, selfish-sounding group. You know, it doesn't mean we don't love other people. But when you grow up in an environment where the world tells you you're wrong, where you are a joke, where you are beaten up fairly regularly because you just happen to play with the same doll as the girl next door. Looking back, I may have wanted to choose another toy. My best friend, Suzanne, was the girl next door, and she loved the fact that, hey, we had the same dolls. And now for interpretational dance. Thank you. So when I was little, it's probably not a surprise. I was a little overweight. I was slow. All of my friends were girls, and I got beaten up a lot. I grew up in the 1960s in a little spot called Stellarton, Nova Scotia, and quickly moved to Halifax, where I went to Dalhousie University and found, oh my God, not everybody in the world is an insane bigot. Now, I'm not saying that everyone from Stellarton is, but they used to be. I want to be clear. Boy, am I getting phone calls later about that. As I grew up, we didn't have the internet. I just knew that there was something about me that wasn't the same as all of the other people who were assigned male at birth. And I tried my hardest to kind of fit into that, to the point where I developed major depression and wanted to kill myself. This went on for many years until I did discover and had the strength to live my own truth and come out as Carolyn. And I'm very happy that I did. Thank you. Because we're made fun of so much, because a quote, man in a dress has always been a punchline on TV, you might understand why sometimes trans people can appear to be a little bit sensitive, because we've been really had this drilled into us by our parents, by our friends, by our family, often who are no longer our friends and our parents and our family afterwards, because it's something that they don't understand, and it takes a long time for us to understand. And I think that's something that it bears that we remember sometimes. But it affords one thing, and that's perspective. You know, when I came out at work, I told them, you know, look, I'm a trans woman. And they kind of looked at me a little odd, and I said, I know your confusion, because I first thought a trans woman was some sort of superhero that rode on Metro Transit. But then Metro Transit wouldn't give me a free bus pass, so I said, to hell with that. So somebody is bothering you on the bus? Look, I'm not the superhero that's going to try to save you. I might speak out, but, that's it. But some people get caught up in that first part, trans, that's in front of a trans woman. All it is an adjective. Hey, listen, you can also call me a fat woman if you want. It's true. I am obese. You can call me a tall woman. I'm 6 foot something or other. You can call me a woman with big feet, but I do appreciate being called a woman. Now, people think a lot has changed, and a lot has. I would never in a million years have expected that I would be here today speaking at a women's march, and you don't know what that means to me today. But some things haven't changed. Take, for example, and I'm only going to speak of my own experience here. I recently had to see a psychiatrist. Again, I have major depression. And I saw my psychiatrist, and during this time, she kept calling me during the whole thing, a transgender. Well, as a transgender. And I'm like, well, for one thing, transgender isn't really what you'd call me. You'd call me a woman, things like that. She didn't seem to get it, so I wrote this nice little letter. I showed it to 3 or 4 friends. I said, look, I'm not appearing like I'm being rude with this, and I faxed it to her. So for my next appointment, I came in and she sat me down and she said, Carolyn, how are you feeling? And I said, well, I have to tell you, I'm going through a hard time. I'm thinking about taking my own life. I'm in crisis right now. And she said, can we talk about this letter? I said, you're the doctor, let's talk about this letter. And then she went on to say, well, I did apologize for using the wrong pronoun once. And I said, but I didn't feel that you were hearing me. And as a healthcare provider, I hope people understand that they've got a responsibility to create a safe place. As someone with depression, as someone who is out there dealing with being stared at for almost the entire day, every day, I think that's why I don't mind being in front of audiences, really. Thank you. I need that safe spot to just let go. And she said, well, after reading this, I don't feel safe having you as a client, so I'm going to have to ask you to leave. So after telling somebody I really feel like taking my own life, that's great, go see somebody else, was my answer. She said that wasn't because I was a trans woman, because she didn't feel safe, and I said, but I haven't raised my voice even once. I haven't said, and all it was, here's some forms that your insurance may need. You better get somebody else to fill those out. That's the type of thing that happens too frequently in our society. That's the type of thing that you just don't expect. When you go to someone expecting compassion and that they know what's going on, you don't really need that kind of stuff happening. But there are a lot of different people going to speak, so I'm not going to go on much longer except to say this. A lot of the problems that exist in our society today is all based around this stupid notion of the truth. Too many people think that they know the truth. And you know what? They do. They know their truth, a subjective truth. But very, very, very few people speak in objective truths. This is the way I feel. This is a truth for me. And you can't argue. You're never going to give up your point of view as long as you say, hey, this is true. Like, for example, if your belief is that all women are born with a vagina, and that's the delineation where you say, hey, that's my definition of woman. So when I say woman, I mean a woman born with a vagina. Well, I can't really disagree with that based on their definition. But there's so much more to being a woman than our parts, isn't there? If I don't have a uterus, or if a woman at some time in their life doesn't have has their uterus removed, does that make her less of a woman? If we're the summation of just our parts, it would mean that. If, heaven forbid, somebody had breast cancer and their breasts were removed, would that make them less of a woman? No, it wouldn't. Most women are born with their bodies and their minds all one nice, beautiful, cohesive unit. For some of us, it's much more of a struggle. We have to deal with healthcare professionals. We have to deal with very invasive surgeries. We have to deal with a public that, for the better part of at least my life, has treated us like a joke. Well, I just hope that I've given people some things to think about and maybe even something to laugh about along the way. But I'd like to thank you all for being here today, and I hope that everybody stays warm, and thank you.